This is Wild Green Streams. I'm Rhett,
I'm Io.
and it is finally the question and answer episode. We put out a post way back in February asking for questions from people in the group, and people gave us some great questions, but we just didn't give any answers. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go down this post and answer the questions as best we can.
The answer to the question of when are these questions going to be answered is right now,
That's right. And also whenever this episode gets posted.
which is technically right now
That's true. That's true. It's
to
posting right now.
whoever you are listening.
To you and I. This is really just kind of a Troy and Abed in the morning situation.
Yeah, time's a flat circle.
That's right. Our first question is from Court, our friend Court, whose question was, what is your favorite oak species?
Part of my answer is just like a deep sigh because when I was learning plants, there are so many oak species and I didn't learn nearly all of them. So part of me that's like the meme that's like why the fuck there's so many beetle. It's like why the fuck there's so many oak. But I always liked, I believe it was the water oaks, which is I think Quercus machoxii, because they had
Quercus
huge leaves, which I think was, I just love when plants have just like ridiculously enormous leaves, especially compared to like the live oak, which has like quote unquote a normal leaf or like what you might think of as a leaf. But then you come across some oaks that have just massive leaves. And I'm like, what are you doing with all that surface area? Photosynthesize? And I just think it's just fun.
We just love a good leaf.
Love a good leaf.
I'll go in the exact opposite direction and say, this is going to be pretty Florida biased since we went to college there, but I'm going to say the sand live oak, which is what I answered in the thread actually, because sand live oaks are kind of a medium-sized oak tree, very similar in the way they look to a normal live oak. So they look kind of like a giant piece of broccoli, but not as giant as a full-size live oak. They're like maybe like half size of that or quarter size of that. And their size difference is probably a result, probably speaking from my perspective, someone else might actually know this answer for real, a result of their habitat, which is sand hills and sandy uplands where there's not a lot of water, not a lot of nutrients in the soil. And they're just this tough little tree that I think looks really good. I also think that they are underrated as a city tree because people will plant live oaks all over the place in cities. And then 20, 30 years later, they're like, oh my God, this is tearing up the sidewalk or my yard or the branch is falling on my house or something. If you're thinking that and you still want to plant a live oak, don't listen to me. You should totally do it. However, if you are worried about that, but you want the live oak shape and general appearance, sand live oaks are great.
And isn't there like a dwarf live oak? I saw some once and they were, they're like barely knee high to a grasshopper, these plants. And they're like, yeah, they're like 80 years old. And it's like, God damn.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. I saw those too a lot in my time, but they're good little trees. They're like barely a tree at all. They're actually knee high to like a person.
Opposite end of the spectrum of trees with giant leaves, but that's
Sure.
the duality.
Next question. Do you feel that turning species that aren't considered charismatic into memes helps their image grow positively in the public eye? James is asking our kind of question.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the answer is yes. I think in our experience, it's definitely been yes. But in addition to that, there was this study that came out a few years ago it was referring to people in Poland. That's significant because the language barrier was part of how they made their argument. In Poland, there was a meme that was based around pictures of proboscis monkeys. And people would take pictures of proboscis monkeys like reacting to each other or whatever. It's a monkey with a gigantic nose. That's why it's called a proboscis monkey. Traditionally, not a charismatic species. But people would take these pictures of proboscis monkeys reacting to each other and doing all kinds of different things. And they would put their own names and the names of their friends on them as a way of making that kind of a meme. Or even the females will have a small nose and the males have this gigantic one. So they might be like me, you, and the ugly one is their friend, that kind of thing. But they found that actually that boosted the public profile of proboscis monkeys significantly. And during the study, there was a fundraiser for proboscis monkey conservation that did as well in Poland as panda fundraising did for the time period when the fundraiser existed. So, I mean, it's not definitive, but it certainly seems like at least this one meme trend, this one time boosted the profile of a relatively uncharismatic or at least silly looking species up to the level of the thing that defines charismatic megafauna.
Yeah. I've used that study in a class assignment before. I feel it definitely has an impact. I saw there hasn't been a study out yet, but about like whether all the attention around Mudang as a pygmy hippo, which is a very threatened endangered species, has generated any additional money. And the data isn't clear yet, but it's possible. But even if it's not meme equals exact dollar, in looking at science communication, there's often many bricks in the wall. So it might not be meme trend immediately counts towards conservation dollars, but meme trend might bring more awareness to the species, might make people less afraid of the species, less hesitant about the species, less, hateful towards the species. So they're more open later to when they encounter more information to be more likely to listen and care about it. So it's all about moving the needle slowly and slightly, where like as much as, it would be great to have like a big needle move of like one meme, boom, save the world, which like we're kind of trying to do. It's usually a lot of very small steps. So if there's memes can be a part of that small step, I think they can be very effective because it's comedy and comedy is very useful for getting information to people. It's sort of like I say it's like giving a cat a pill where you like hide it in something. And so there's like, you got funny joke, but also like interesting science fact. And I think that the increase of awareness, it can be hard to measure tangibly how that exactly quantifies to dollars, but I do think that it helps. And even if it doesn't, it's fun and it hurts nobody, grows the economy.
That's your running for office pitch.
Yeah. Vote for me, but also don't because I don't know if I can handle that responsibility.
I think that as far as Wild Green memes go, so you're asking us a question, James, that's directly connected to something that we work on a lot, which I'm sure you knew. And the philosophy behind Wild Green memes and how we see it as impacting the world is that, first of all, it's fun, and that's enough. But in addition to that, I think that it gives us an opportunity to get a little bit of nature in people's lives in a place where it normally wouldn't be, like these social media feeds. It might not actually be there that much normally. That might be the least natural part of people's day, staring at this little screen that has a lot of anxiety in it. And if we can give someone a positive experience and also have that be connected to something to do with an animal or conservation or nature, I think that that is probably actually one of the more effective ways that we can get this out and into people's consciousnesses and into their minds just a little bit more at a time. Because I don't know about you, Io, but I don't change my mind that often.
Depends on what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so like core beliefs, maybe never that by definition, but I don't know. It's very hard to get people to change their minds. There's 8 billion people. Some of them you can pick up just from volume, but I feel like the expectation people have when they want to do something good, especially around getting other people to also do something good, is I said the thing, now everyone's going to change and do it. And even in the best case scenario, like looking at yourself, you hear people say stuff that they think you should change all the time. And a lot of the time you want to go in the other direction because of that. I'm interested in your experience with this, but for me, I just try to lower my expectations a little bit and raise the level of understanding that I'm giving to the world and to other people.
Yeah, this is very much a lot of what I have learned about fairly recently in terms of communicating science. And one of the things talking about like values and beliefs, and values don't change, whether the values could be security, it could be, there's different, sets of groupings of values. So people have different names for it. It could be altruism, it could be adventurousness, it could be reward or achievement or whatever. But like values are pretty static. They don't really change. And beliefs are related to values, but sometimes the beliefs could change a little bit. But if you have XYZ topic, say you're going to plant trees or something, if you go up to someone and say, okay, well, you should plant trees because it helps fight against climate change, but they don't really believe against climate change. They're like, well, I'm just not going to listen to you. That's the backfire effect, where if you try to go too hard on something, someone will not only not take in what you said, but like recoil and like double down on their original opinion. But if you were like, oh, if you plant trees, it will like improve the soil in your yard and you can like have better flowers or crops or whatever, then people will be perhaps more amenable to what you're saying. So I kind of think of a lot of issues as like you have like a 20-sided die. D&D mention, well, D&D isn't the only thing that uses 20-sided, but you know, nerd mention. And like if the die is the issue, there's many different faces on that die from which you could approach that issue, and different approaches will work for different people. So someone is like, if you go, hey, this is going to really save you a lot of money, they'll be like, that's it, I'm in. Or someone you could be like, hey, this will like provide a better world for your children to be in. They're like, all right, I'm in. So you really have to know who your stakeholder group is, who you're talking to, and know what is important to them. And so you can tailor your messaging so it's the most effective. But also, like, you know, just standing up on a soapbox and telling people stuff, they're like, yeah, I don't care. But if you're like, actually, let me listen, what do you have to say? They're like, no one's ever asked that before. So I think also that fosters, you know, trust in science and more community and things like that. So definitely, like, and the like lightheartedness that memes happen, I think are a great way to sort of like break the ice and the tension. Because science can sometimes be seen as like kind of stuffy, kind of ivory tower, academia especially, which like all valid critiques. So anything that sort of like breaks down the barriers a little bit and helps foster more connection, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, and I think that the way that we talk about things effectively used to be a little bit different than it is now, and I think that the world is still adjusting to that. I know that's groundbreaking stuff to say here, you know, no one else has ever thought of that idea.
The
But
world is changing. Do you guys know about this?
crazy. Do you guys know about this thing called the internet? But I think that there are two ways you can really get a lot of attention on the internet without being already famous. One of those is to be very, very scary and to make people feel very scared or feel either alone or like they're in an in group and everyone else is in an out group. And the other thing that I see that's very successful is being silly and goofy and trying to make people laugh. I don't know why those are the two things that work, but of the two, I'm going to go with the silly one. Seems like better things come from that.
Yeah. It's more fun.
Yeah, it's just a better way to live too.
I think so. You know, laughter is the best medicine. Just like be a little silly goofy. Like, why not? We're all going to die anyway. Why not have a good time?
Funny you should say that because Jessica asked, will it all be okay in the end? And my answer to that is yes, Jessica, it'll all be okay in the end.
Yes. I think it was, oh, it's a movie. It's like something, movie with like something hotel. I can't remember the name of it. But one of the quotes in the movie is like, everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, that means it's not the end. And then another was just like a shit post tweet that I saw on the internet that was like, if you're going through hell, keep going. Why would you stop in hell? And I'm like, you know what? Honestly, fair point. So yes, I think it will be okay in the end.
I think sometimes we frame the present as though it's the end. And we do this in all kinds of ways that I don't think we really realize. Like, I see people all the time when they're talking about nature or like a preserve area or a group of organisms or something, they'll say the last great wild place, or this is the last of this species. And then they'll say in the same breath, but we've preserved it forever. And I think what they mean is this is a precious and valuable thing. But what they're saying a lot of the time is this is the last of that thing. And I think it would behoove us to think of stuff not as the last great place or the last of this species, but as a seed of something that could be a lot bigger again in the future.
Yeah, this is like something that we're carrying on and then we'll hand off. It doesn't end with us, which is a very kind of human way to think about it. But also there's also lots of, I take that back that it's a human way to think about it, because there's a lot of cultures in history and time and place and now and all the time that have like viewed natural resources as much more of a stewardship to be passed on, and or just sort of like, oh, what's the word? Oh, like stewarded, guarded, maintained, taken care of for the time being, with the understanding that it will go forth and prosper and go for the next generations.
Yeah, and if that doesn't work for you, there's this phrase that I learned from the astronaut Chris Hadfield, which was there's no situation so bad that you can't make it worse. By which the
Ooh, I really
implication was like by panicking, because he was talking
yeah.
about at the time he was talking about a time he was on a spacewalk and he was actually blinded by a malfunction in the equipment and he had to do the rest of the
Yes.
spacewalk, which is one of the most dangerous things a person can do, completely blind, and he did. But the thing he had to remind himself was there's no situation, even this one, that is so bad that you couldn't make it worse. No matter what, I think that there's two frames that we've had here that are both useful. One is that you just have to believe it'll be okay in the end, and it doesn't matter if you're right or not. That's a useful belief, but I do believe it. The other thing is that there isn't an end. I mean, it's an infinite game that we're playing. I think pretty much all the things that are worth doing in life in that kind of context are infinite games, and that means that there just isn't an end, and you can always do something that will improve it.
Yeah. And I like, especially with the there's no situation so bad that you can't make it worse. That's like a much better way of framing, like, well, it could always be worse. Because I think that's, annoying and is not helpful.
Yeah,
But saying
right.
like no situation so bad that you could make it worse, it tells you like you have a choice in this situation.
Yeah.
Like you could make it worse or you could make it better. You have a choice. It's not just inevitable that you're going to have a bad time. So like a lot of times things can feel very out of control and you're like, well, it just feels inevitable that, we're going towards whatever we perceive as this XYZ ending. But it's like you do have a lot of choices, and maybe the choice is just that like you're gonna maintain a little bit of silliness and you're gonna share some memes. But there are, um, I mean, this is a hot take, but like capitalism doesn't want you to like be happy. So I'm like, if you are happy, you're fighting against capitalism, blah blah blah. So yeah, so you have both more and less choices than you think, but your choice is still significant, and you can choose to um, do things that make you happy, and that counts, and that is worth it, and that helps.
Yeah. Not a question. Okay. See you, Jill.
So anyway,
Not a question, but please talk about the inevitable carcinization of Crustafarianism. So I assume that they're talking about the Leviathan lobster god cult, which
mhm.
is an internet-based religion that's actually kind of a friend of the group. They participate a lot in our charity battle, which it sprang from a meme, I think a meme page that was called "A Plan to Make a Leviathan Lobster God." And the plan was because they grow indeterminately, they never stop getting bigger while they're alive, and they don't age in the same way that we do. They were like, what if we just kept a lobster alive for long enough that it became like a skyscraper sized god? And then we worked at that. And this sprang into a religion. I think there was a moment when this became, at least briefly, a real religion. And that is because one of the tenets of their religion was to support conservation. And they've had a charity battle gang during the Wild Green Future charity battle a few times. And during one of them, someone said that they made a huge donation to this gang, like a few $1,000s, which is one of the biggest donations we've ever had. And they said that they temporarily delayed getting a new refrigerator so that they could make that donation. And on the one hand, I was a little bit like, don't do that. Like, if
Yeah,
you need to, you should pay for your living expenses
yeah.
before you
If your
donate. And
if
that's
your freezer is not keeping things frozen, like you do need a new one.
right. However, I do think that a religion becomes real at the point when it becomes uncomfortable. And that person made a real sacrifice for one of the tenets of this funny online religion. So I think in a way, they actually did make it a real thing, at least in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a religion, like you just need like followers or like a set of rules. I know because John Oliver did a spoof of it once about tax exemption and things like
Oh
that.
yeah,
So
I don't
like,
mean tax exemptions. I just mean doesn't
no, no,
mean
no, I know,
anything, like
but like in talking about tax exemption, he like I don't know looked up the like actual rules for what a religion is, and it's like you just got to have a set of beliefs and you got to have people like follow it, and so like that's what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's real. So the question was, do we think it will inevitably carcinize? I mean, I don't know. They seem pretty committed to an immortal lobster god. I don't think that that leaves much room for evolution beyond that. They're not like breeding further lobsters.
Yeah, it's just one lobster that's getting really old,
Yeah.
which I would be curious to see because really, like, often what usually ends a lobster's life is that they get so, if they're not, eaten or something, they get so large that they cannot molt out of their shells properly. They just become too big and ungangly, and it's just not feasible. So the idea is like, if we could help this lobster molt, could it live forever? Which one, I don't know how feasible that would be. Two, there might be some other limiting factors that we just aren't aware of. But like the fact that like maybe on paper it could possibly work, I think it's fun.
Lori says, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Hypothetical.
Well, now this question is hypothetical, but I want to talk about reality.
Yeah.
I don't want to just talk about, I want to, like, what are we, like, let's break down the physics of it. I think it depends on individual woodchuck, how strong is it? And then the wood that you have, anyone who's ever carried something like big and like cumbersome and awkward, like if sometimes things are not super heavy, they can still be awkward to carry if they're just very large and awkwardly shaped. So like, do you have lots of like awkwardly shaped sticks, or do you have sort of like compact firewood that the woodchuck could throw? And then like, are you measuring by volume of wood, mass of wood, distance thrown? I just have more follow-up questions on how this competition would be metered out and measured.
I'm going to say not a lot. I think they're pretty small. I think I could chuck a piece of wood further than a woodchuck. Not to brag.
but but could you dig a hole as good as a woodchuck?
Absolutely not. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. I can use a shovel, right?
But like, can you dig a little tunnel?
No, probably not. That's a good point. I think they got me there.
Yeah.
Please talk about the name of the group and how it's changed over the years. It's a good story. Thanks, Jennifer. We won't be doing that today because it's kind of a long story and because listeners can already go hear it at a previous episode of the podcast that we did during the 10 days of meme miss in 2024. So there's a set of episodes. You just got to scroll back a little bit and you'll get to that answer.
Link it in the show notes or something, maybe, if we can do that.
Yeah, we can totally do that. We'll link it in the show notes. What should be done with Bradford pear trees in North America? Kill!
Thoughts?
Kill! Kill!
There was, I don't know, something I saw it was basically like, remember, like the best time to cut down a Bradford pear tree is whenever you see them. And I thought that was very funny.
That's awesome. I think that there is a middle path here with Bradford pears and with most invasive city type trees, which is that there is a budget for replacing city trees already because they are constantly getting cut down or dying and needing to get replaced anyway for various reasons. And I think that you could set it up so that even if your city's strapped for cash, all you got to do is wait. So I think what you could do is just try to make it so that your local city or your local area, even the HOA, if you're in one, doesn't allow invasive plants to be added rather than killing all of them. And you can just wait and slowly push them out by replacing them with native species. Obviously, that won't work in areas where they've escaped cultivation and they're growing themselves, except that a lot of invasive species are only really that successful because we're constantly disturbing their habitat. So if in areas where we're constantly disturbing their habitat, we are replacing them with native species when we get a chance. And then in other areas where we're not disturbing their habitat as much, it starts becoming more natural. We're kind of going to squeeze a lot of these invasives in the most cost-effective way possible.
I think we can also turn them into the wood that the woodchuck would chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood.
That's a great idea.
Two birds, one stone.
Bert asks, but can they? Why?
May they?
Alice asks, am I right to suspect that all the eucalyptus trees in California are heavily contributing to their wildfire problems, and to feel guilty about it as an Aussie, and thus from the source of eucalyptus trees? Those things are absolute chokers with highly flammable oil, sad face. I bet that the phrase absolutely chokers would be a lot more fun to hear in an Australian accent.
I wonder if it's also chuckers.
Oh, maybe it might be. I do you feel guilty that your people have unleashed eucalyptus trees across the globe?
I would say that it doesn't really like unless you like were knowingly selling eucalyptus trees to California to be like this is going to make the wildfire problem worse. Like I don't think you need to feel guilty. Um because you like other than being Australian, you kind of have nothing to do with it. And also because like in a grander sense like the guilt isn't gonna if you want to fix the problem, like the guilt isn't necessarily gonna help. So I think part of I'm am not an expert in the California wildfire problem. Wildfire. I've been saying wildflower a lot recently, so trying to jump back into saying wildfire is gets me all confused.
I would love
Um,
to have wildflower
but
problems.
that's a t-shirt. No, that's a t-shirt. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were contributing to some of the issue because they can be oily. I don't think you have to feel guilty. The follow-up question that Alice has is possibly preceded by the more philosophical question, do trees count as wildlife? And I would say no, because wildlife is animals, not plants. But I guess suppose that's maybe a philosophical debate that could be that they're wild and they're alive. But in my experience, wildlife typically refers to organisms in the kingdom Animalia.
Yeah, I think it's usually meant to refer to animals, but sometimes I think of plants as wildlife. So I think that over time, people used to say wildlife, and what they meant was stuff you can hunt, and everything else was kind of like just there. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that over time, that's broadened to be all animals, or at least most animals, maybe not like some parasites or something. I think that maybe plants can be included in that one day, but at some point too, the word's got to mean something. So I'll say eventually it'll mean plants, but people will be wrong.
That's like the shirts and stuff that you can get that said, I'd agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It is the children who are wrong.
It's the children who are wrong.
Gabby says, it's carnival season here in Brazil, and as always, I'll be wearing a summer costume based on a meme here. What meme should be an easy and light costume to wear at Brazil's carnival? Now, Gabby, I understand that carnival happened in February, right after you asked this question, and it's now June. So I went and I looked, and it turned out that you posted in the group after you made your decision without our help, which was very good. And you dressed up, I'm telling this to everyone else, but addressing you, Gabby, as the purplest petunia. So Gabby actually, I'll probably link to this post in the show notes as well. She took a flower that she made out of purple material, and she painted it white so that it had the story built into it. And then she dressed up as this white flower
Ooh.
because referencing the time that in the late 80s, early 90s, scientists tried to create a purpler petunia by adding extra purple genes into an already purple colored petunia, and it triggered some feedback loops in the petunia's defense systems against viruses that completely negated all of their purple genes and wound up with white petunias instead. So a total failure there, but an interesting one.
My first thought was a costume which probably would not have been easy or light, but it was the first thing I thought of when you said Brazil Carnival, which is the one of the birds from it might be it's I think it might be one of the birds of paradise that turns into like the black oval orb with just the two blue eyes. I just think that would be fun because they dance around and there's dancing around at carnival, so I think that could very seamlessly add to the theme of the whole day. Okay.
Well, we've lost Io, so I think that's the end of our question and answer episode. David Schiffman commented and said, favorite shark, favorite shark, favorite shark. You'll have to tune in next time when Io's here to hear theirs, but mine is the bonnet head.
I'm back.
Io's back. What's your favorite shark, Io?
I gotta say whale shark.
Why do you like whale sharks?
I just like that they're um I like things that are sort of anomalies in their groups, and they're anomalies, I would say, because they're so big. And they're also filter feeders, which is not what most sharks are. They're the largest fish species and shark species in the world. Second is the basking shark, which I also really enjoy because I just think they're so silly. Like, why did you? I mean, maybe there's not really a why in evolution, but it's like you're so large and you're so goofy and you're just like swimming around, like filter feeding when, all your cousins are got super sharp teeth and attacking things. And I just think that's fun.
I agree. That's actually part of why I like bonnet heads. So I have personal experience with bonnet heads because during undergrad, we would go out to this place called Seahorse Key a couple times a year. I stayed out there for a little while in this lighthouse on this island in the Gulf of Mexico. And there's this long, shallow seafloor going off the Florida Gulf Coast, goes miles and miles out into the ocean, and you can walk pretty far out in ankle deep water at low tide. And we would go out in the evening and we would be looking for shells and little animals and things. And while we were doing that, small, just, a couple feet long bonnet head sharks would swim around our ankles hunting. And it was just the most magical experience.
Aww.
That personal
That's
experience is really why they're my favorite. But also in terms of them being a unique thing, they are one of the only shark species with a major component of their diet being made of plants and seagrass.
Yeah. Yeah, they are very cool. And they look funny. I love an animal that looks funny.
There's one more question before we go, and I think it's a very important one.
Okay.
Kyle, we've been keeping a secret for a long time, and it's time to end this secret. The question is, can scallops really Y?
It's been long enough. I think the people are ready now. I think we are ready now. It's been enough time that we've sort of, prepared that we can, it's the right moment. Sometimes with these are delicate matters and, timing is correct, is, important and PR is important. So I think, asking, can scallops really Y or is that just a myth? I think also the public is ready to hear the answer now. This is, the scallops are ready for us to say this now. And so I'm just delighted to be able to, first time exclusive here on the pod to reveal that scallops
One reward that we've had on our Patreon forever, but only inconsistently done, is crediting our patrons on the podcast. So, to make up for this, I'm going to go back in time and, without knowing who we've credited or not exactly from the past, I'm just going to go through the whole list of anyone who's ever been on our Patreon and thank them. So, if that's you, if your name is on this list, listen in for it. And I just want to say one more time, thank you so much. You really make all of this possible. Without further ado, thanks to Maribel, Chris, Julia, Margaret, Neri, Jeanette, Humyara, Lena, Swamp Witch 3000, Deb, Warren, Niovi, Sarah, On My Sleeve, Rachel, Sierra, Gabrielle, Isla, Alex, Aaron, Kate, Jay, Allie, Alyssa, Dakota, Evie, Sam, Kaja, Darren, Sarah, Michaela, Rebecca, Heather, Aura, Ashley, Emma, Kyle, Megan, Savannah, Gutter Dreamer, Rainey, Libby, Jenny, Jamie, Siotachan, Mitzi, Kea, Holly, Nick, Andrew, Shelby, Allison, Just Juice, Catherine, Rayleigh, Jennifer, Shariah, Amanda, Eldritch Moore, Liam, Muffins, Waylon, Emily, Mason, Ryan, Newts, Nicole, Sonia, Sarah, Jordan, Well, James, Lily, Tommy, Glamthropist, Kimbles, Meryl, Denver, Jose, Nick, Alex, Linda Lou, Miles, Julie, David, Michelle, Jane, Jessica, Lauren, Harrison, Kathleen, Katie, May, Evan, Alistair, Chris, Lila, Corey, Liz, Rebecca, Din, Ariel, Peluvian, Maris, Curtis, Theron, Bailey, Matthew, Morgan, Catherine, Cody, Jane, Samantha, Katarina, Emily, Grace, Aaron, Kevin, Allison, Jiri, Maggie, Allie, Lydia, Haley, Jezelyn, Gennaro, Helen, Cynthia, Sadish, Johanna, Satanic Panic, Caitlin, Synapsipe, Kala, Elizabeth, Jenny, Sarah, Emily, Annabelle, Rachel, Jessica, Laura, Alana, Jamila, Jennifer, Ashley, Anna, Kelsey, Elliot, Kayla, Lauren, Megan, Gloria, Adrian, Lindsay, Haley, Olivia, Caitlin, Nicole, Laura, Jess, Sharon, Amelia, Ventus, Omnimnum, Siam, Tessie, Shawakar, Rogue, Kaylee, Christian, Yaku, Chris, Anna, Catherine, Rebecca, Dorothea, Georgia, Gretchen, Claude Monet, that's Clawed Monet, Daisy, Jennifer, Catherine, Aaron, Jacob, Shaylee, Paige, Willa, Jennifer, Kathleen, Jonathan, Ella, Diana, Lena, Bronwyn, Grace, Lady Serpents, Amanda, Desi, Alexander, Mary, Corrine, Ramy, Christina, Estelle, SB Trees, Robert, Ben, Yelena, Monica, Molly, Marissa, Damascus, Karja, Sammy, Lizzie, Dance Fighting, Cass, Lisa, Catherine, Erica, Emily, Sammy, Rebecca, Shannon, Genevieve, Catherine, Kimberly, Christian, Tater, Trier of Pods, Kim, AJ, Alice, Emily, Ellie, Mothstradamus, G-Law, Desi, Evan, Jamie, Elijah, Cody, Lauren, Aaron, Emily, Poya, David, Kate, Marin, Isaac, Sarah, CJ, Brandy, Leanne, Dylan, Caroline, Alicia, Livy, Liz, Lane, Desiree, Anastasia, Laurel, Ashley, Chelsea, Lorena, Laura, Hillary, Leah, Anissa, Gina, Radwolf, David, Angie, Space Trace, Allie, Emily, This Fish Flies, Mandy, Katie, Corianne, Christina, Noir, Philip, Sam, Dan, Heather, Noah, Joshua, Jessica, Alex, Ash, Hin, Shyla, Ann, Catherine, Kayla, Stasia, Ariana, Christine, KK, Eleanor, Sasha, Rachel, Alexis, Rick, Christopher, Shara, Don Shin, Stephanie, Sean, Caitlin, Savannah, Liz, Dino Loris, Annie, Becky, Dylan, Andrew, Amos, Stephanie, Jaden, Zach, Ashley, Destiny, Bryce, Lauren, Rio, Alicia, Chelsea, Steven, Stacy, Annalisa, Riz is here, Emily, Gabriel, Julia, Mason, Alicia, Kimberly, Alessandra, Pamela, not Michelle, Megan, Grace, Sriracha, Helen, Anxiety Aardvark actually, Casey, Lindsay, Owl in the Green, Cheney, Pauline, Anna, Giacomo, Rebecca, Liz, Amanda, Annie, Brady, Corey, Rachel, Amy, Clark, Sarah, Chrisana, Victoria, Cosmo, Robert, Deirdre, Nicole, Sarah, Madison, Ivo, Kay, Zach, Leah, Haley, Lady Kirai, Patrick, Celia, McKinley, Serena, Emily, Sage, Megan, Sterling, Carly, Kaylee, Jules, Combing, Digital Mobius, Annie, Lost, Suad, Claire, Dylan, Liv, Anna, Joanna, Karen, Laura, Benjamin, Hillary, Grayson, Natalie, Emma, Chaotic Megan Energy, Lena, Aaron, Olivia, Skippy, Catherine, Harry, Megan, Spidey Books, Marilyn, Rachel, Rainey, Tony, Elena, Allison, Sam, Tommy, Ilya, Ultimates, Madeline, Scarlett, Sally, Ryan, Talia, Stephanie, Andrea, Colin, Kristen, Brooklyn, Julia, Krista, Beck, Jeffrey, Megan, Kimberly, Jennifer, Callum, Amanda, Draztastic, use your outside voice, Lily, Ewan, Daniel, Holly, Trinity, Kirsten, Becca, Tatamona, Imby, Morgan, Stella, Diovala, Christy, Wrathgate. Lauren, Jim, Alyssa, Jack, Matt, Kristen, Marissa, Tina, Pocky Nightmare, Dragon, Belle, Kelly, Casey, Alexander, Allison, Alice, Marissa, Amanda, Taylor, Shannon, Gabriel, Caitlin, Kimberly, Cynthia, Maggie, Kim, Daniel, Natalie, Nikki, Karis, Lazulis, Laura, Squeezebox Cat, The Other Mike, Sarah, Beth, Amanda, Greta, Jennifer, Chad, a cheese what? A cheese pierogi, Jessica, Boone, Slava, Cody, Elise, Jessica, Amanda, Gentleman Raccoon, Robin, Lisa, Kelsey, Trish, Eve, Stan, Klimbo, Aubrey, Caitlin, Brett, Candace, Lavender, Drew, Kelsey, Lauren, Eric, Ellie, Michelle, Jennifer, Regretful, Sydney, Lady, Rose, Kara, Decidedly, Jessica, Bethany, Cindy, Morgan, Danielle, Noah, Melody, Roberta, Lauren, Gilbert, Lillian, Timothy, Kristen, Costa, Nathan, Joshua, Taylor, Laurel, Kat Zia, Kat, Erica, Riley, Sarah, Moth, Agam, Brandon, Heidi, Dawn, Summer, Vivian, Amaranthine, PG, Renee, Bonnie, Alyssa, Emmy, Ariel, Rachel, Smelby, Rachel, A Person, Kest, Lily, Lauren, Skylar, Emily, Colin, Seong Young, Rachel, Kara, Kojal, JG&T, Jesse, Jessica, Lindsay, Mike, Stevie, Michael, Bring on the Bugs, Elizabeth, Morgan, Hanako, Terry, Elsa, Sean, Liz, Carly, Connor, Alex, Yuko, Jordan, Amelia, Tara, Courtney, Emily, Nicole, Georgia, Emily, Karen, G, Amy, Amanda, Zoe, Jennifer, Eleanor, Maria, Jen, Benoit, Kathleen, Sheesh, Charlie, Kinto, Sola, Felicia, Melanie, JB, Squidney, Rowan, Samantha, DJ, Brooke, Jared, Lindsay, Trey, Caitlin, Maya, Jill, Jesse, Lauren, Gary, Jelly, Shannon, Stephanie, Jacob, Samantha, Sophie, Buffy, Aspen, Rim, Jackie, Joe, Internet Jones, Nicole, Hane, Marie, Heather, Mistina, Carmia, Helena, Chad, Pancakes, Kayla, Elise, Gian, Jordan, Chris, Kate, James, Jolie, H, Gage, Alicia, Carolyn, Juliana, Holly, Liz, Kat, Aaron, Alexandra, S, T, Kat, Cassie, Nicholas, Sparrow, Angela, Logan, Mindy, Madeline, Pat, Megan, Abby, Matthew, Rebecca, Ivan, Aaliyah, Emma, Courtney, Eleanor, Nathan, Emily, Devin, Lucy, the Gucci Saint, Renee, Emily, Jude, Kelby, Beverly, Evan, Justin, Jesse, Robin, Elsie, Cassie, Shlee, Elizabeth, Valentina, Sam, Lauren, Shroom Dad, Jess, Lo, Amanda, Win, Amanda, Courtney, Dylan, Allison, Shrethan, Mariah, Bex, Johnny, Gabrielle, Egg Dog, Tatiana, Emily, Beth, Haley, Joanna, Shauna, Melissa, Aaron, Tony, Rob, Eleanor, Kirsten, Michaela, Alex, Celine, Hatan, Frederica, Diane, Kristen, Tiffany, Corey, Hannah, Mara, Logan, Jacqueline, Wonderbra, Danielle, Raquel, Kristen, Ruth, Dolly, Thaisa, Ellie, Vespertine, Tasia, Mia, Megan, Glasses, Mina, Selena, Erito, Nicole, Peachbug, Clara, Sasha, Rocks and Reptiles, Amy, Flo, Barry, Dawn, Emily, Kay, Victoria, Jamie, Misty, Stephanie, Linda, Claire, Rupa, Jane, Episto, Rhonda, Andrea, Eric, Barbara, Alexander, Kate, Björg, Michelle, Zan, Meadow, Carrie, Ellie, Nika, Bree, Ashley, Mariana, Ashley, Karen, Maeve, Ilex, Kat, Ruth, Niam, and Lee.